Now, we do have some hardware news. Intel Arc Alchemist Xe-HPG GPU specs, performance and price and availability available. Everything you need to know. The much-awaited entry of the Intel in the discrete graphics segment is getting closer and closer as the company gets ready to launch its first Alchemist GPUs for gamers based on the brand new Xe-HPG architecture. Now, the product info had said, we were going to get a Q1 2022 release date. That was sort of true, but they were OEMs and they were all overseas. So, if you were in a Western country, you didn't see that happening, unfortunately. When we talk about GPUs, only two names come to mind, AMD or NVIDIA. Both companies have been offering their latest GPUs for a diverse range of markets. These include desktops, mobility, workstations, and servers. Intel hasn't had a profound presence within the graphics segment yet. They have the highest GPU share of all companies. Why is that the case? Well, Intel has had GPUs, but only in integrated ones that are found on almost all of their CPUs. Whether consumers use those GPUs is a whole different thing. Now, for the most part, if we're talking about install base though too, really most PCs, at least for in the past 10 years, have only had an Intel CPU, and you do all of your tasks off of the integrated Intel CPU. Not to mention when Intel had their partnership with Mac, and they were in all of the MacBook Airs and all of that until you got up to maybe the Pro, where you got an integrated graphics. It's pretty safe to say that most of them are in use as well. That being said, of course, if you want to get any sort of real graphics works done, or you want to actually get some, gaming done, you probably would get a discrete GPU. And in that case, then no, you weren't running the Intel GPU, right? The integrated one. Intel is now aiming to change that. In fact, for the last couple of years and ever since the formation of their Visual Technologies Group, which is headed by Raja Koduri, the company is set to release a brand new graphics architecture that is all set to enter the GPU world in 2022. Meet Arc, the brand new chapter of Intel's graphics vision. Now, it's interesting because Raja actually came from Radeon. So he came from Radeon when basically Radeon was doing very poorly. Radeon's barely recovered with the 6000 series. Obviously, they took the traditional rasterization crown with the 6900 and the 6950 XT. They're still behind on ray tracing. However, obviously now with the departure of Koduri, and I don't know how the roadmap worked out, right, if he helped work on this, but after the departure is when we saw the 6000 series come out. It's basically, we'll also be seeing the 7000 series, which looks to be extremely, extremely well placed against NVIDIA. And then on the Intel side, as far as I'm seeing it with these particular, reveals, it doesn't look like they're going to be that competitive. They're also having a very weird launch time. These are competitive barely with like mid-range current gen GPUs, and we have the new generation of GPUs coming from AMD and NVIDIA in Q4. So we're looking at like a Q3 launch of the Intel Arc GPUs onto the Western markets, etc. And then right after that, we're going to have 4000 series and 7000 series from NVIDIA and AMD respectively. So we know that the brand name from Intel is Arc. That's cool. And let's go ahead and get down from here and get some more information as far as this goes. We also have come to know that the product, what the products will be called. So they're going to be the A series, right? So the A770, the A750, but overall you have an A300, A500, and A700. So there's like 3 steps of performance essentially. As far as everything else, the Intel Arc Alchemist GPUs are designed primarily for desktop and notebook platforms. From the information that we have currently gathered, the lineup will consist of 2 GPUs, and each of those will have various SKUs, and each of those SKUs will be featured in a range of solutions for desktop graphics cards and mobility GPUs. All Intel Arc Alchemist GPUs will utilize the TSMC 6nm process node. Another point about that, of course, is going to be that on the AMD side, we're getting down to 5nm. And then on the NVIDIA side for the next gen, it's going to be basically a modified version of 5nm that will be slated as 4nm. Albeit, you know, the competition is very interesting between AMD and NVIDIA this time around, because you have NVIDIA going to a multi-chip module design, as well as hitting over 3 gigahertz on their core clocks. And even with a smaller manufacturing process, or a modified 5nm manufacturing process going down to 4nm on the NVIDIA side, it's only slated to hit like 2.7 gigahertz. So the actual core speed is looking slower on the NVIDIA side, and it's taking a lot more power. But that being said, both companies seem to be way ahead of Intel at this point. Each vector engine is composed of 8 ALUs. In total, we are looking at 128 ALUs per Xe core. The Xe core further features its own dedicated 192 kilobyte L1 cache. So that is a total of 6 megabytes of L1 cache on the complete chip. Intel fuses 4 Xe cores together to form a render slice, which is composed of 4 ray tracing units, 4 sampler units, geometry rasterized in HIZ engines, and 2 pixel backend blocks with 8 units on each. These render slices are put together to form the main GPUs. The flagship is composed of an 8 render slice configuration, which features 32 Xe cores, 512 vector engines, and 4,096 ALUs. There will be a different configuration with 2, 4, and 6 render slices, but we are focusing on the flagship part. It will feature, the architecture will be able to achieve 1.5 times higher clock rates than the XE-LP, and also deliver 1.5 times the performance per watt. This means we're looking at clocks of 2.1 gigahertz range, considering the XE-LP discrete GPUs were clocked at 1.4 gigahertz. It also means that Intel will be able to squeeze an additional power out of the architecture should they want to, without increasing the power draw, or reducing the power draw while keeping performance constant. Out of the 2 GPUs, the first one will be known as the ACM G10. This is the top SKU and will be featured in the mainstream and high-end designs. The second GPU is known as the ACM G11. This is an entry-level SKU, and as such will be featured in the entry-level and mainstream designs. Each GPU has its own SKUs with different specifications. They go into more detail on all of the different features, including things like 8K 60-bit HDR encode and 10-bit HDR encode, some of the other codec support that they have, as well as creation tools including FFmpeg, Handbrake, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, XSplit, and so on. On launch, I'm sure, of course, OBS is included in there for the content creators out there. In addition to that, Intel Arc Xe display engine will support the latest display standards such as HDMI 2.0B, DisplayPort 1.4a, and 2.0 10G support for a variety of high resolution, high refresh rate modes for obviously your monitors. You know, basically being able to run up to 2 8K 60 HDR panels. That's not pushing games at that, to be clear. That's just rendering out and being able to have your workspace in them. And then 1080p up to 360 hertz and 1440p up to 360 hertz. As for adaptive syncing technology, Intel's discrete Arc Alchemist GPU will support both adaptive sync and speed sync technology. The former will sync the display's refresh rate to provide a smooth and tear-free experience, while the latter will speed up the latest frame. That's interesting, delivering low latency, no tearing, and no cap. There's also a third mode known as smooth sync, which will blur distracting screen tears with a dithering filter. So down here we have all the specifications. Obviously the one we're most interested in will be the 780 with a 256 memory bit bus. And that's obviously because as miners, what we're looking for is that memory performance, because most algorithms are memory intensive. Now we looked at the 192-bit version, and what we found was it is going to be similar to RTX 3060 hash rates, you know, outside of fully unlocked, preferably is what we would expect to see as far as from a total memory bandwidth position. However, we are looking at 200 watts versus the 170 watts on the 3060, so not as power efficient, but depending on pricing, it could still be good, and it's yet to be seen how well the drivers will work as well as everything else once we start getting miners integrated into it. So that's pretty much it as far as all of this is wrapped up. They didn't actually announce like a release date so far, so we're still waiting on that. I think the expectation is like right before the launch date of the 4000 series from AMD or from NVIDIA and the 7000 series from AMD. So we're going to have to wait and see. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.